Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. I notice I've got a bit of a different setup going on here, and I don't know if it'll always look like this, but at least the camera's better quality now, so hi in HD. This is the second part of my now ongoing review discussions of the Mistborn series, and today we are looking at the Well of Ascension, Book 2 of Mistborn by, of course, Brandon Sanderson. If you're new to the channel, I recently reviewed the first book, and I don't want to call it a review so much. I didn't rate it for people who are new to the series, but just go over my experience with it in general. I talk about my thoughts on different plot lines, world building, and character arcs, and what I liked and didn't like about the series, as well as some predictions going forwards. And I'm going to do the same thing this time around. The main two breakup categories I have are plot lines and characters here, and I find that this was really a book about character development for our core suite of characters, at least the ones that are being taken forward, presumably into book 3. This was really the book of character development, at least as someone who hasn't read the third book yet. It appears to have filled in a lot of the gaps of things that I wanted after book 1, but didn't necessarily get, and fleshed out those characters a bit more, made me a bit more invested in some of them, although I do still find Vin to be lacking. I'm not a big fan of her as a character. However, towards the end of the second book, the clarity that she gains does make me think that I'm going to enjoy her at least a little bit more in book 3. But overall, before I get into the deep and nitty gritty of it, I really enjoyed this book. I liked it a lot better than the first. If you watch my first review, you'll know that I was a bit iffy on the series. I wasn't quite sure if I was going to enjoy it as much as the Wheel of Time, for example, which is obviously the capstone of my channel given the channel name. But I did really enjoy the Well of Ascension much better than the first book, The Final Empire, and I'm not going to lie, a big part of that is the fact that we're getting Sazid point of views now. As I said in part 1, Sazid is like my favourite character in the series, so far at least. I liked Elend more in book 1. He did drop off for me a bit in this book, but the fact that, I don't know, maybe about half of this book, I'm gonna say, maybe like a third of the book is Sazid's point of view. We get a lot more detail on the Ferukami, or Feruchemi. Probably people are gonna hear me say Ferukami. That does sound a bit dumb now I say it a couple of times. It's probably Feruchemi. It rolls off the tongue better. But yeah, for Sazid we get to learn a bit more about that, how you fill the different tin or copper mines up with whatever attribute and then tap it at a later time. And we just get to see more examples of how that can be used throughout the stories. It progresses quite early on. He's with Marsh, I believe, in the prologue, and he uses his tin mind, I think, to float by making himself lighter, but that's actually filling up the tin mind with power because he's storing the attribute of weight. So it sort of makes you think about how you can use things in reverse ways as well, even though that's technically charging it up. It's making use of it in the situation, actually to his advantage. And I thought that was a really cool start of beginning thread of Feruchemi that we could then learn and build from throughout the rest of the novel. And I guess I've sort of gone into a character already there, but I guess I can mask this as a plot line, because I was planning to start with plot lines. So we will build from this from that opening chapter with Marsh and Sazid into talking about the prophecies and the great steel tablet or tableau that Sazid and Marsh discover during their, I think it's not Canton, I can't remember what it's called, the place where all the Inquisitors come from, or where they were based at least, before mysteriously disappearing at the start of this book. And the very first line of this is of course something that gets brought up later on and is important, that words not etched in steel can't be trusted. And I did feel like the line had some significance when I initially read it, but I didn't quite expect the reveal that came from that later in the book. And I think that was one of the things that I liked more about this book, was that the reveals were more rewarding to me. I couldn't figure them out quite as easily. Some things I did catch onto, some things I caught onto, but just later than I would have in book 1, for example. I felt like I had book 1 figured out, I was just waiting for it to happen. Whereas in this book, I wasn't quite sure what was going to happen. And that wasn't so much with the prophecy plotline, but it came from the 3 different armies that were surrounding the city. So the main bulk of this story takes place with the core group, our thieves that we've grown to know and maybe love a little bit, minus a dead Kelsier, and they're joining with Elend, now the king, and ruling his council of people, the assembly I think it's called, and maybe not doing the best job of it. And 3 different armies come to attack, at least that's what the blurb on the back says, but it's actually just 1 army at first, and the first army to turn up is Ellen. I'm gonna keep that in the edit, I guess. Is Ellen's father, Strathventure. He has come back from wherever he left the city near the end of book 1 when the revolution happened, and he's returned now with armies, and it's about a year later from the end of book 1's events from what I understand. And Strath has returned to take the city. He's said, "Hi, I'm here, I've got a really big army, and I'm ready for you to hand over possession of the city to me now. Cheers, son." Ha ha ha, laughs in, jokes, I hate you on the inside. It feels like Strath hates all of his children, as we later find out he has another son, half-brother, I guess, to Elend, or maybe step-brother, I'm not sure exactly how it works. But one of Strath's many mistresses did bless him with a Mistborn, who he appears to have neglected for the majority of his life until he snapped and became a Mistborn. And then he's now got a huge position of power. And this is of course Zane that I'm talking about. And I'm just gonna take a moment to apologise for how much I'm jumping around, because I was trying to do this in sections and segments, yeah, but it's just not going that way, is it? So we're gonna jump around all over the place, is what it is. Zane is a fucking madman, right? And he's got voices in his head that are apparently God, and I would really like to know who gave it that name, because at least at first it doesn't say anything other than telling him to kill everyone. Me, obviously a Wheel of Time fan, if you're familiar with the Wheel of Time, this just sounds like loose therein, so I'm familiar with this. I already know like exactly what this man's going through, because I'm just imagining Rand at his worst, and instantly the character makes so much more sense to me, the irrational behaviour and the level of games that he's playing that come to light later on. Honestly, like, I didn't realise just how deep he was playing everyone. I knew that he was setting up his own thing, and I didn't quite know what his goal was, kind of like Lanfear in a way. I'm sorry to make constant Wheel of Time allegories, I will try and keep this just to Cosmere and Mistborn. But Zane was really 10 steps ahead the whole time, and that gave Strath a huge advantage through the majority of the book until Zane was dealt with near the end eventually by Vin. The thing that I didn't particularly like about his character, and one thing that led me to like Elend a bit less, was the strain he put on their relationship. It felt a bit it didn't feel real, this mysterious figure in the night, as untrusting as Vin is, that was obviously sent as an enemy in some capacity and reveals himself to be that, and she has a crush on him. And that just complicates everything. Which was like the only real downside for me of this book, was all that sort of teenage relationship building. It didn't work as well for me. But not long after Strath's army arrives, it's also joined by a second army, Set. So the guy from, I believe, the West, who's been conquering over there. Basically different rulers and lords have just been sprouting up all over the place, taking as much control as they can of the situation after the Lord Ruler's death, and then building armies to go to Luthadel, because they think that there's a huge atium supply in Luthadel, which our core team in Luthadel haven't actually managed to find. My theory, going back to what I believe, I brought this up in the book 1 review that I did, my theory is that the atium has been used in some way to keep the deepness at bay, or to maybe build power in the Well of Ascension. I don't know, something to do with that, but I think the atium isn't ever going to get found. I think it's been used already. But yeah, all these armies are coming because they think the atium is there, and it's an incredibly powerful resource, and essentially the highest form of wealth in this world, at the moment at least, because it's such a powerful resource in battle. A Mistborn with atium basically can't be killed except by another Mistborn with atium. And there's a finite supply now in the world because Kelsier blew up all the atium farms in the last book, which was meant to be a giant victory but now is becoming a problem. Not that I disagree with it. So Set's army turn up, and we find out that that's where Breeze has been hiding, or Breezy, should I say. Bacardi Breezer himself. He rides up to the city on the horseback in front of an army approaching, and Vin leaps out to save him. We find out that Breeze has been creating rumours of atium in the city to bring Set's army, because he figured out that Strath would come back, and that having 2 armies outside was better than having 1 army outside, because then they can use them against each other. So at the start of the book, everyone's like, oh, we don't know where Breeze is, oh, he's off doing his own thing, I guess. He wasn't off doing his own thing, he was protecting the team in a roundabout way, and as it turns out, near the end, Set's army do end up joining with the Luthadel forces, so it works out for the best. Good job, Breeze. And there was a fantastic moment where I think Ham makes a joke about, oh, what did he do, sleep with his daughter? Because Breeze is not that type of guy, and then it turns out that he was actually having a relationship with the daughter. I thought that was brilliant. And her coming in and being like, oh, Breezy, I love you so much. It was just, yeah, great. Her name was Alrayan, I believe. And I think she'll be around going forward, because she did basically bring Set's army to their side in the end. And then finally, we have the 3rd army that pops up, and that is led by Jastes Lecal. Jastes Lecal? I don't know how you say his name. Jastes, maybe? Let me know. How do you say Jastes? I guess I don't need to know because he ends up dead, but at the moment he is leading an army of Kolos, these creatures that were mentioned a few times in the first book, but we didn't see any of. We see them quite early in this book, the Kolos, as Sazid stumbles into their encampment, and it is led by Jastes Lecal, a guy who was seen in book 1 during Ellen's little philosophical meetings. So, not the guy I expected to be leading Kolos' army, but it turns out he's been through some shit, and a lot of his family have died, and basically he says now, I can control them. I've been bringing them here because you've got all the ATM and I don't have any. Makes sense. Guess he's got nothing to lose. Yeah, it's a third force, but this one is a lot more rampaging because these creatures are just bestial and they just want to kill. You know, they're fighting amongst themselves. Like, Zazid's getting brought into the camp and they're just killing each other. And then walking, carrying on with the day. And I kind of like that. It kind of makes me think of an Aiel camp. What it might be like if there was like two feuding factions next to each other in camps. They'd just be killing each other and then moving on with the day. Oh, I was just putting the tent pegs in, but bang! Deal with him. He's gone. Don't worry about it. It's all good. Yeah, and then they just give like a calm excuse afterwards, which does later end up being used by Elend in a magnificent way. We later discover when Elend goes to the Kolos camp as it's outside the city, he decides to fight one of them. He picks a fight with the smallest one because he figures everyone else is doing it, he can just get away with it, and he wants to know what's in these weird pouches that they're all carrying. And it turns out what is in the weird pouches is coins, or at least that's what the Kolos think they are. They're just bits of wood painted as coins. So that suggests that these creatures do in fact have some sort of human, that like they are humanoids. They have cognitive thought and processes. They're not just one single target. And this is something that gets addressed a bit later in relation to the Kandra as well, so I will go into that more later. So at the minute we've got these three armies all around the city threatening it in different ways, but none of them want to move because if any of them move then the other ones will strike. Inside the city there's more turmoil because the assembly that Elend has created a council of people. There's 8 Scar, like worker Scar, that are like working class, I guess, and then you've got the middle class, which is the merchants, the Scar who think they're above the Scar, but they really shouldn't have such a high opinion of themselves, and then there's the nobles who definitely shouldn't have a high opinion of themselves, but do. And other than Elend, they're all basically dicks, including even Lord Penrod, who at first seems cool, but by the end of the book it's like, wow, this is just a scared old man. He's a bit like the one that does the Red Wedding. I can't remember his name. I can't bleach that from my memory, but anyway, yeah, Lord Penrod ends up to be just a scared old man. Phylan, whatever his name is, Lynn, wasn't a fan of him, obviously, not meant to be, but yeah, he was just like a dick. And the assembly basically collapsed because he gave them the power to oust him, which like, I get it, in a true justice system that would be that, you know, you need a way to oust the ruler, but he put the wrong people in charge of this and then left them alone to their own devices, which was Elend's big mistake at the start of this. However, he did use the time wisely. He didn't ignore them for no purpose. Most of his time in this earlier portion of the book takes on his character development with Tyndall, who, the first terrorist woman that we meet. She comes in and kind of has a Cadswain-esque entrance. She approaches and starts telling Elend he's an idiot and he's not a king and he needs to do this and that and that. And essentially she molds him into the king that he needs to be, or the emperor that he needs to be even. It's quite nice to see. She's basically Cadswain from the Wheel of Time, but effective and not quite a bitch all the time, just a bitch when she needs to be. Because she knows that a soft hand isn't going to work on Elend. He needs to be whipped into shape. And Tyndall became one of my favourite characters in this book. I adore her, and I was so broken when she died. From the first time I saw her and Zazid interact, it was such a brief interaction, and like, within the first words I was thinking, oh my god, are these two holding a candle, a flame for each other? You know, is there a thing going on here? And then like at the end of the conversation she just touched his hand for a second, and then he moved his hand and I was like, oh no, Zazid, I know exactly I can tell what you're feeling right now. You're thinking because you're a eunuch that you can't be with a woman, and I know exactly what she's thinking, that you just wish you'd let her love you. Just wanted them to be happy and snuggly and warm and read books, and then she died. That really did bum me out. That was the one death that really hit me in this. And I did say I was going to jump about a bit, but yeah, respect for Tyndall, because at first I wasn't sure if I was going to like her, and she quickly became one of my favourite characters so far. All the terrace people are quite fascinating that we have met, even if that is just Tyndall and Sazid basically. Her story as well of what horrors and atrocities she went through before finally being able to join the rest of the Keepers, basically, because they thought that was the right plan. Honestly, everything about Tyndall's character is perfect, and yeah, I wouldn't change a thing. I'm just sad we're not gonna have any more of her, and that Sazid is basically just broken now. I don't blame him, because she was a magnificent woman. Respect for Tyndall. So, while Elend is trying to become the king that he needs to be, and learning from Tyndall, him and Vin don't really have a lot of time for each other. She ends up spending a lot of time out in the mists, killing assassins, and sparring with Zin, the aforementioned crazy character with voices in his head that may or may not be the Lord Ruler. Working theory, we'll get back to that. Her character, I don't know if she has character development. She's basically trying to convince herself that she wants to be with Elend and not Zane, yet she keeps going after Zane, and it's kind of just teen drama. But she's a teenager girl, so I guess it should be, realistically. But her more important development to me is the stuff we see in the magical side, and not just allomancy or ferricamy even, but the mists. And there's these spirits in the mist, and she can sense allomantic pulses coming from them. But they just seem to dissipate whenever she interacts with them. However, they leave this chill behind, and the mists are apparently killing people, which Sazid has been following trails of through the land before getting to prophecy tablet that him and Tyndall end up studying. So the mist is arising as this threat, and believed to be the deepness. I came to that conclusion myself quite early, and I'm still not quite sure if the deepness is actually the mist, or if the deepness is even a real thing, because who knows, maybe that was just something made up by whatever was trapped in the Well of Ascension. But the mists are rising, and they're becoming more dangerous, and these spirits seem to be killing people, but there also seem to be good spirits, because they end up directing Sazid to try and stop Vin at the end, and Elend to try and stop Vin at the end, and Vin to save Elend's life. They're trying to... Some of the spirits are trying to get good stuff done, and the people that are dying, we're not actually seeing spirits, we're just hearing stories of them having seizures in the mist. So there seems to be some sort of differential there. I feel like the spirits aren't actually of the mist, but they're of Elendian, the previous Clenium, I believe, possibly. So we have Elend on one hand learning to be the king, and Vin on the other hand trying to learn what's going on with the mist and the deepness, and Sazid in another corner trying to figure out what's going on with the mist and the deepness, and also what the hell this stone tablet means of one of his former terrace people's religion that has previously not been known. And Sazid and Tyndall end up spend a lot of time just studying the transcripts that Sazid took of this steel tablet, and it turns out that they were studying lies, because the transcripts change. There's a mysterious power that is trapped in the Well of Ascension, gets released at the end of the book, and that is changing the text that's in, like, literally that he's transcript, his rubbings, it's changing it. And so some of the mist spirits end up tearing off bits to try and get him to notice that it's different in his memory or something. It's quite convoluted, but essentially there's an unknown power that was trapped, but somehow had the ability to still be able to change text in the real world, hence why the original was etched into steel. So that's an interesting concept, because basically everything that we're led to believe about the Hero of Ages and the Well of Ascension, even like the stuff that we think we know because it was what the Lord Ruler was trying to stifle, you assume he was trying to stifle it because it contradicts his rule, but it turns out he was actually trying to stifle it so that nobody would ever try and release the power from the Well of Ascension. So the Lord Ruler was actually trying to be a good guy, he just went about it in the very wrong way. My theory is that once taking the power from the Well of Ascension, that would eventually corrupt someone and make them evil in a way, maybe as evil as the power itself appears to be. But by existing and protecting the Well of Ascension, the Lord Ruler was ensuring that nobody ever let that power loose, at least until Vin came along and got used as a pawn by evil entity to release it by releasing the power from the Well of Ascension rather than taking it for herself. So the theory would then be that if Vin had taken the power for herself, she would have probably gone evil too. She might have saved Ellen's life with it, but she might have gone evil too. And I think I'm jumping around way too much here. Way too much. So I'm just going to try and stick with the element I'm on and then pick up the pieces of the bits I've not managed to talk about so far. It turns out that Ellen ends up basically bleeding out on the floor at the Well of Ascension when Vin goes to take this power. And a bunch of stuff happens before this point. But at the end of the book, one of the really epic things I want to talk about that did happen was Ellen gets healed, and the way that he does get healed is through swallowing this new metal that they find near the Well of Ascension, trapped in these weird pottery discs. And this new metal gives him allomantic powers, apparently all of them, because he appears to be a full Mistborn, and immediately, instinctively starts burning pewter, despite being unconscious, and heals himself. That was a fantastic moment, and I actually had a prediction really early on in the book when Vin was trying to find out the opposite of aluminium, what the alloy of it was. It turned out to be duralumin, which is used to like supercharge your power, but it drains all of it instantly because it's just such a strong burst. It's like a mega flare essentially, for whatever you combine it with. But at first we didn't know what duralumin did, we just knew that there was an alloy of aluminium that she was looking for, and I thought that the alloy of aluminium would give someone powers, because aluminium seemed to drain all their resources. I thought, oh, maybe that means it gives them the ability to use it. Turned out not to be duralumin. Like I say, duralumin has its own thing, but we did find a metal in the end that gives people Mistborn powers, and I thought that was really cool. It has cool implications moving forward. I don't know if Mistings could be given the rest of the allomantic powers with it. I don't even know if they'd want them. Maybe it'd be a case by case thing, because I don't think Breeze would take other allomantic powers. I think he's such, Breeze is so focused and narrowed in on being a soother that he'd be distracted by other powers and wouldn't be able to use them. He's just so in tune with being a soother. So that was a really interesting thing that happened near the end, and I can't wait to see how that impacts the characters going forward, and hopefully it makes Vin and Ellen's bond are even tighter, and removes that aspect of her that's thinking he'll never understand me, he's not a Mistborn. I'm hoping it doesn't lead to like jealousy of, oh, now he thinks he's better than me or the same as me or whatever. That could go wrong, but all being well, it will bring them closer together. And before we get to this point at the Well of Ascension, they had actually left the city to search for the Well of Ascension in the Terrace Mountains, following a clue from Sazid that had been fabricated because he was trying to get them out of the city before all three of the armies attacked. What turns out is Straff backed off because Zin had been killed, not to his knowledge, by Vin. They had a fight and she almost went with him, but then decided to stick with Ellen, as she rightly should have. There was another reveal that happened during this part, but I'll leave that to talk about in a minute because I'm going off on too many tangents already. I don't know how many times I've said that in itself this video. But essentially, Straff's army left, Set's army left because Vin killed a load of them and scared him off, almost killed Set, but decided not to, and he just left. And then there was just the Koloss army, so the Koloss army attacked, and Straff came back. The Koloss army is in the city. Vin comes back before Straff. Sazid is going Hulk, using all of his like metal mines to do different things. He's making himself not only stronger, but makes himself weigh more so that there's more weight behind his swings and stuff like that. The way he's using his metal mines is really awesome, and we saw him have to go through a period of being weak and unstable before this so that he could charge them all up. And like Tyndall says a line at some point like, no, he's preparing for battle, look at all the metal he's wearing. He's charging that up. And it's like, oh damn, yes, as he knows more than anyone, battle is coming. And despite not being a warrior, he's going ham on those Colossus, just tearing him up. His gate is the only one that survives, even though 600 of his 1,000 men get sent to another gate to help Lord Penrod at his command, or King Penrod. Sazid's gate is the one that holds, and it's because he's going mental on everyone. That is fantastic. Vin comes back, realizes she can use Duralumin to push her soothing so far that it actually works on Koloss. And this is something that she came to the conclusion of due to her interaction with the Kandra, or Sir. And throughout the whole book, there's been a mole in the group. There is a Kandra impersonating one of the groups, similar to Lord Renew in Book 1. The Kandra can they eat people's bones basically and take their form. They're a bit like Miswraiths, or cousins of, they call themselves. And Orsur is the name of the Kandra that becomes Vin's ally after being Lord Renew and then Kelsia's ghost. He becomes a dog because she puts him in a wolf's body, hating him. And at first he's just like, the contract, and he has no character at all. But he comes out of his shell a bit and they begin to have some heart-to-hearts basically. And also becomes more of a character that you like and root for, and he starts doing things to help Vin when she needs it. It turns out during the final confrontation with Zin that it wasn't actually Orso was killed and impersonated by another Kandra working for Straff, Tensoon. But Tensoon does eventually break his contract. The first time we see a Kandra do so at all in the series. I don't know if that will happen more, if more contracts will be broken, but Tensoon breaks against this contract and does help Vin in the end. Without his help, Zin would have probably killed Vin, you have to assume, but Tensoon helps. And then he disappears to go back to his people and admit what he did and assumably be executed, I think. But during that reveal, we find out that an Allomancer can control a Kandra, a bit like a warg in Game of Thrones. At least that's how they make it. They make it feel like that, like you're having an out-of-body experience and you're inside your own body, but you're also inside theirs and you can move them the same as you can move yourself. So this turns out to be the same thing that can work on the Koloss, and it's a drawback. a recurring theme in the Well of Ascension is that the Lord Ruler has built drawbacks into everyone. None of his servants or tools that he created over the years were foolproof. He had a way to control them or manipulate them. With the Colossus and the Kandra, it's the fact that he can literally control them using strong allomantic powers. You can assume he was using Duralumin to do some of the same feats that Vin accomplishes in this book, because it gives such an enormous burst of power. The Inquisitors, on the other hand, have a spike through the chest, and if you remove that spike, they go. They're dead. That's the one that seems to connect it all together. And I actually have another theory about that, because unless I misread it, Zane has one of those spikes through his chest himself. And I wonder if the voice that's talking to him, that he thinks is God, telling him to kill everyone, other than Vin, is actually either the Lord Ruler or the evil that was inside the Well of Ascension. And I'm wondering if Steel Inquisitors get spoken to by God in the same way, because when Marsh attacks Sazid, he says, "I don't understand why I have to kill you," and then attacks and tries to kill Sazid. And it feels like he was just given an instruction. It feels like when Zane looks at someone and the voice in his head goes, "Kill him, kill him," said God. It feels the same to me. So I think the spike through his chest is the same thing as Zane's apparent madness, and it is actually an external force, maybe not God, but some sort of deity, either the Lord Ruler or the power in the well, speaking to them and trying to get them to bend to its will. The reason I think that this might be related to the Lord Ruler is because it appears that it's telling the Inquisitors to kill the Terracemen. At least we find out near the end that a bunch of the Terracemen have been driven from their land because the Inquisitors went and killed the Synod, or the Keepers. So that feels like it would be something the Lord Ruler ordered if they ever were discovered, and they apparently outed themselves as soon as the Lord Ruler was defeated. So if he somehow managed to find out about that, then he would tell the Inquisitors to go there and kill them all. And they would, because they're following the voice of God that's in their head, if this theory turns out to be correct. So then, it would make sense why Marsh was told to kill Sazid, because he's a Terraceman and he's a Keeper. And because the Terracemen think that they follow the prophecy of the Hero of Ages, but that's actually the will of what's ever in the Well of Ascension. It's all very complex, and it's not quite being made 100% clear at this point between Book 2 and Book 3. And honestly, I'm really looking forward to Book 3 now, because Book 2 has renewed my vigour in the series. And as Brandon, as an author, I wasn't sure if I was going to really dive into the cosmere after reading Book 1, The Final Empire. But after the Well of Ascension, unless things get worse in Book 3, I think I will probably be diving into Stormlight and looking at more cosmere things. And that's exciting for me, because more books! Yay! Just getting back to a point I was on probably about 20 minutes ago, is that Vin manages to take over the Colossus and they stop killing everyone in the city. She then sends them against Straff's army. She also just kills Straff using one of the Kolos swords. In an epic moment, she just leaps out of the sky and cuts him and his horse in half. And that's just him done. I wanted him to die for so long. Despicable character, not going to say too much on him, because I honestly don't like talking about some of the things, some of the topics and themes that are prevalent in his character. It makes me feel icky. So I was glad that he died. He needed to die from the first moment he came on page in this book. if not in the last book, to be honest. The little bit of that I saw of him in book 1 was pretty despicable too. But out of the 2 warlords, or out of the 3 warlords, I should say, that are besieging the city, Justice Lecal, he needed to die because he was an idiot. Straff needed to die because he was evil. And Set, I actually don't mind. I kind of like Set. He's just realistic. I don't think he's evil. I don't think he's good. He's just realistic. He sees the world the way it is, and it's kind of like in the Wheel of Time. There's these people, the Tinkers, who follow the way of the leaf and preach peace, and they're basically pacifists. And it's lovely in concept, but it has no place in the world that they're in because there's violent, inhumane creatures who are trying to kill everyone. So, like, it just doesn't make sense, and I feel like Set would fucking hate the Tinkers. He'd be like, you stupid pieces of shit, you're all gonna die now. And that'd be the end of it to him. So, he's maybe not a good person, but he's a realistic person, and I can appreciate that bluntness. He had more character to him as a villain. You can understand why he's a villain, but you can also understand it from his point of view, rather than just, I can't understand this person because he's doing inhuman things, like Straff. So with the armies dealt with, they do then go on to the Well of Ascension, and we get the big reveal of the book that something was freed. And the prophecies of the hero of ages and everything was a trick. And I've already talked about that really, so I'm not going to go into it too depth. I've already talked about Ellen getting his powers, and Sazid finding out at the end that the rubbings they took were changed or modified by an external source. The mist is rising and killing more at the end of this book. And the next book is called The Hero of Ages. I'm really looking forward to getting into it. I'm going to just talk about a couple of theories now that I have, and one of them I've already covered was the Inquisitor Spikes and Gordon killing the terrorist people, and also that the terrorist people were stamped out to try and stop the Well from ever being released. But the question that I find myself asking is the metal that Elend took at the end that gave him Mistborn abilities, is there an opposite of that? Is there an alloy of that, or is that an alloy of a base metal? And does that mean that there's a metal that can take away someone's allomantic abilities? Because that could be really dangerous potentially. So it's just something to watch out for. That I'm wondering if will be brought up in book 3. You have to imagine it will, because they've set up this dynamic of each metal having an opposite, a push and a pull. And to break it at this point would break the construct that the series is built on to me. So it almost feels like it has to be used in Act 3. There has to be an opposite that takes away someone's allomantic powers. Unless this is the opposite of... Oh no, we've already got the opposite of Illuminating. That's Duralumin. I'm not really sure what the mystical power is. Haven't heard much about it. I don't think it is the deepness, because I don't think the deepness is actually a real thing now. But maybe it is the mists, and the thing in the well was the deepness. And by releasing the power rather than taking it, Vin released the deepness into the world, and the mists are getting stronger. I don't quite understand the whole metaphysics around the Well of Ascension, and hopefully that gets explained more in the next book. I will find out, obviously, soon. But for now, I think that's all I have to say on this one, really. I will just take a moment, actually, to... There's a couple more characters I just want to speak on briefly. So, Clubs and Docks, RIP, they're both gone. I wasn't ever a massive fan of Clubs, but he did... All of them got a bit more development in this one. Docks I find to be bland anyway, so I wasn't that bothered about him dying, even though he is a core linchpin member that keeps the team running and organises everything. As a character I found him quite bland, so I didn't mind so much when he went. Clubs got a bit more characterization towards the end, and I really appreciated his final interaction with Succeed when he gave him the religion about art. That scene really moved me. Basically every passage with Succeed in this book was phenomenal. Any with Succeed and Tyndall together is... but yeah, so Clubs and Dorks both bit the bullet in the end during the final battle with the Colossus ravaging the city. Ham made it out, but maybe he has one arm? Or he has an arm in a sling? One of his arms is badly damaged. I don't know if it's going to get better or not. He's a pewter thug, so you'd think it would heal with enough rest. But we'll see. Maybe he'll be incapacitated in some manner moving forward. And Spook thinks he's a coward now. He's grown up a bit and stopped with the horrible speech. He uses it every now and then as a joke, which honestly is fine. That's probably what it should have been in the first place. I guess Sanderson learned from maybe a mistake in book 1, must have had some feedback. That was not a good, wasn't a good thing. I can't even do it taking the piss, it just makes no sense. But Spook, rather than development, he was sort of shadowed for a lot of this, and a lot of the characters were because we were trying to figure out who the Candra impersonating, like, which the imposter was. So a lot of the characters' development got somewhat sidetracked for these side characters because we weren't sure if they were an imposter, and that became the lens that you were viewing them from. Yeah, in the end, just Clubs and Docks don't make it. Ham's alive. Breeze is, like, catatonic, but he's okay, I think. I think he'll recover. Maybe Ariane could have something to do with his recovery as well. Succeed is distraught over Tyndall, as am I. I can't wait for book 3. If you enjoyed this video anyway, please do leave us a like and a comment down below. Let me know what your favourite part of the book was, and I'd love to hear your thoughts about the series in general. It looks like I'm going to be continuing Cosmere moving forward, so here's to that, and here's to The Well of Ascension, the second book by Brandon Sanderson, which I would probably give a solid 8 out of 10. Thanks, I'm James. This is Wheel of Time. See you next time.